right, we're live. We've got the disco
Fridays
background going.
with the law crew.
On the brand new, officially released, by the way. So any crashes that happen, we can say this is to a proper product. But Waved Up Video, it's come a long way. They keep working on it. I'm really, really happy to work with them. Affiliate link in the description, folks. But let's talk. It's April Fool's Day, so why not start out being controversial? I noticed earlier, David, during your podcast, that you are tapping into, hey, surprise guest number one.
Speaking of tapping in.
There you go. I noticed earlier you're talking about how there are people who follow us or that we hang out with, shall we say, that are looking for conspiracies where they may or may not be. A good example is there was a huge backlash about the Will Smith slap, stating that it was staged. I'm sure everybody has read that, and it.
What are you talking about? I don't know anything about this controversy of which you speak.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I didn't know, but of course it had Pfizer involved. It was all a Pfizer thing for alopecia.
Oh, really?
Medication
the conspiracy I actually don't know about. I thought I was just joking about the overall.
It's multi-layered. First of all, it looked staged. The setup looked staged.
I don't think it did at all. Have you been punched in the face, David?
Never. You know why?
I have.
Nice, polite individual.
Unfortunately, I have, and so I could literally see it was completely real because I've been on that side, complete with the whole. If you looked at his expression, his cage was rattled. He absolutely did get hit, but
getting hit in the face is no fun. The fact that he didn't pull up immediately and touch his face is indicative of the fact that we now know that Chris Rock has shared that he got beaten up a lot when he was younger and even as a young adult, that this is something that happens. And when you're bullied, showing that it hurts you generally doesn't help you. So now I understand more why he didn't immediately grab his face. But when you get hit, the natural urge is to immediately hit somebody back. And the fact that he didn't was stunning.
Well, he did put a fist there. If you look at it very briefly, Joe, you've been punched in the face, I'm sure. What are your thoughts?
Speaking of punch-worthy faces, I'm just kidding.
I was actually going to say that Chris Rock's face looks like one that's been punched a lot. Not because it looks so damaged. He just looks like the kind of guy who, like, when he was younger, people probably saw him and were just like, I just want to punch that guy in the face. He's just like a certain, I don't know, certain something about it. But yeah, I'm not surprised that he was in a lot of fights when he was a kid. Usually if you're smaller, which he's physically smaller, you end up scrapping around a lot more, as opposed to like bigger kids never have to fight because no one wants to fight with them. So, which, explains why Will Smith, I guess he wasn't used to throwing a punch. He was probably always one of the bigger ones. And
it was a slap. I'm being corrected in the chat.
It was a slap because the slap's a particular sign of disrespect. It's
no,
like, how dare
that's
you
not why.
It was a bitch slap. It absolutely was a bitch slap straight out of South Philly.
It was a slap. It definitely was a slap. That 100%, because it's impossible to punch someone and finish with your hand open.
No, it was
a punch someone. So it was definitely a slap. I agree with you. I don't think it was intended to cause offense. I think he was afraid that if he punches him, he might actually really hurt him. And that he'll have to be, and he'll be like responsible for the repercussions of that. He's like, I don't want to physically punch him.
Yes, I think a slap seems like more of an insult than an actual punch. I think he meant
it as an insult. More of like a take the glove off and smack you across the face. How dare you? Are we going back to dueling? That's what I want to know. Are we now going back to dueling to defend someone's honor?
Well, I could go back to glove slapping like Homer Simpson in that episode.
I can prove you wrong.
Duel. But I'll tell you why I think it looked fake. Chris Rock's reaction was definitely it undermined the stageness. His eyes were watering up. He was discombobulated. He said, we're going to give a documentary instead of give an Oscar. But when it first happened and Will Smith walks up on stage, it looked like Chris Rock was actually leaning into it. If somebody, even a friend, is walking up to me in that brusque of a manner, I'm not like leaning in with my head.
David, lights are in his face. Keep that in mind.
Okay,
he can't see, so he's going.
And he sees somebody coming up to him.
What is going on here?
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's legit.
Yeah.
That's a legit response.
He probably thought that he was going to just take his mic from him and make some other offhand joke or whatever. That's not that he was actually going to physically assault him, but he was going to grab his mic and like make his own statement because he can do that because he's Will Smith, as opposed to actually coming over and hitting him in the face. But I just want to be clear here that it cannot be that Will Smith wanted to do the whole "how dare you" and slap him with that mindset, because everyone's not sure if he threw a punch. He starts off throwing a punch and then holds back the last second to do a slap. If his whole mindset is I want to embarrass you by slapping you, no one would be questioning was it a punch, was it a slap, because it would have been an open hand the whole way through. So when he switches up in the middle, that's him, I think, having second thoughts, like, do I really want to punch Chris Rock in front of millions of people or not, and changing and saying, okay, I'm not going to punch, I'm going to slap. That's my thought on that.
Well, Nate may be coming, may not be coming, and Nate said flat out it's a bitch slap from his community. I mean, it's very, very specifically and deliberate, and it did look that way to me.
If anybody watches enough ridiculousness or television, slaps can knock people out very easily as well. So that's whatever. But that being said, so other than the fact that people said it was staged because it looks staged, just Eric, good point about leaning in to see what's going on. Then the Pfizer connection was discovered. I talked about it the other day, where the Oscars were sponsored by Pfizer and BioNTech, which is itself interesting. Pfizer's working on some medication, which is in stage 2 of 3 for alopecia. I don't think it's staged because, bottom line, Will Smith looks like a jackass in all of this, and for something to be staged, someone would have to not mind the way it makes them look. There's no one in their right mind wants to look like Will Smith right now.
Yeah, and especially
off brand for him. Sorry, Aaliyah. It's so off brand for him. He's not Eminem. He famously didn't curse in his music. He tried to stick to, though he has like the Bad Boys movies, most of his off-screen persona has been the approachable, family-friendly good guy. So it's very off brand, where if this is like an Eminem or even Kanye storming the stage at the VMAs and taking the Taylor Swift's microphone, that seemed much more on brand for them. Yeah. This seemed like a literal snap to me because it's so off brand.
He didn't want to go. He was punished by his wife and sent out there to do that. He's laughing. The first reaction he has, his gut reaction is laughing.
No, there's multiple possibilities.
He's not responsible for his actions. He's a grown-ass man.
No, he's not.
Two possibilities.
No, he's not.
Hold on. Let me get in here. So 2 possibilities on that. Either he laughed at first and then thought, wait a minute, and it like processed the joke and thought, I don't like that joke. Or number 2, he saw how she reacted and there was some sort of a dynamic because there's been something going on between them. I mean, there's a lot going on between them, as has been very public, but like that. So either of those are possible, but I really don't think that it was staged for the reasons that Emily was just saying about, his persona. He's basically like one of the new America's dads. Like there's a few of them, right? Like Tom Hanks is another one like that. He's the same kind of person that like has this sort of persona. And on top of that, this is his first time winning an Academy Award. Like the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that these people put into to win this kind of an award, it's rare. Like Leonardo DiCaprio, how many times was he nominated before he finally won, right? Like he was like working for that for so long. I just don't think that like after that amount of work that it takes to be nominated, let alone win one of those awards, that you would be okay with having that same night be also associated with that kind of weird sort of reputation, because no one will ever forget that, right? Like his Oscar winning night will now forever be associated with violence.
He might
his best and worst night. His best night and worst night in one evening, or best moment and worst moment, all one evening.
What's the expression that someone put out that said the devil comes for you at your highest moment? Does anyone know?
Denzel D.
Apparently, Denzel told Will Smith that before he took the stage to take his award. What do you guys think of the Academy saying that they asked him to leave, and then all of the people on the ground saying that they didn't?
They're full of shit. Guess what? They have security. They could say, "Please escort Mr. Smith out." Done. There is no way. And Whoopi Goldberg contradicted it too, because she said, no, we didn't ask because we didn't want to have the black man getting escorted out before the award. Nate did a video on this, just came out yesterday. TMZ, with the sources saying it was a lie. Whoopi Goldberg herself saying that
Variety
wasn't true.
came out with sources as well.
So no, you know they're trying to backpedal. I think half of this would not be a problem if he was escorted out that evening and somebody else had to collect his award. That it would have been, you know, tit for tat, even except for the SAG aspect, because this is a workplace violence incident, and SAG has to investigate because it's 2 union members, one a victim, one a perpetrator. They got to do something.
Well, SAG has to figure out what they're doing with Rust first.
Well, I mean, Rust is a whole
that's a very good question.
We got to get beyond the DA, let alone that. I mean, we're still waiting on the sheriff's report.
Well, the FBI still has the gun for weapons testing.
That just went off when the hammer went down.
Yeah.
On its own.
But I think they could have escorted him out. When I was looking back yesterday at the Academy's statement saying we asked him to leave and he refused, it actually, when my husband and I were talking about it, it actually made me think even worse of Will Smith. And I was like, who are you that not only do you come unhinged and slap somebody, but then when they ask you to leave after you've done that, you're like, nah, I'm cool, and you stay. So I'm wondering now if that's a false statement that the Academy made, is it defamatory? Because the Academy would know it's false. I think it's reputationally damaging. And I think it gives Will Smith leverage later this month when the Academy goes to punish him, saying, well, you released this defamatory statement that you know is not true. I think the Academy.
You know what?
The
reputational
harm aspect is hard on that one.
They could have had.
You know, you could say that the reputational harm is already baked in with the slap.
Yep.
But I think you could find a few people that would say, I mean, he doesn't need to win money. He needs to prove a minimal amount of damages. I think he could file it and leverage to embarrass the Academy and turn it around on them.
But how does that make him look in the court of public opinion, though? I don't know, because he's already it would make him look like he's now going on the offense in other respects. I don't know. I don't know.
I would say by virtue of his own conduct in that particular context, he made himself defamation proof.
You think?
Good point. Yeah, because of that.
Yeah.
But also, how do we know that there wasn't some low-level stage manager that was saying, Mr. Smith, you probably should leave. You probably, you know, and not necessarily somebody in charge, but if any member of the Academy said that, then they have an out, right?
I doubt anyone would have the guts to say it's Will Smith unless that was sanctioned. But I can we just take a step back and think about who Will Smith is when we're trying to assess Emily, your position here, and this is let's think about this. His wife has, within the last couple of years, has separated from him and basically gone off publicly, hooked up with a guy half her age who basically, let's face it, it seems as if she was going retro and trying to find the modern day Tupac, because she originally had a relationship with Tupac. Her own daughter is writing letters to Tupac. It publicly, like we're saying, I'm writing letters to Tupac, who's been dead for decades, but writing letters to him. This is Tupac's, the aura of Tupac clearly hangs over that house, and that she's going back to August Alsina, who basically looks like today's Tupac. I don't know if talent wise, but certainly has the whole thuggish type of thing, the exact antithesis of the modern day dad that Alita was properly couching Will Smith as being. And that, I don't think that's what Jada. It seems as if Jada has a stereotypical type of hunger for the younger bad boy, and Will Smith is trying to live up to that. So when she says, go out there and defend my honor, he's got this open relationship. He clearly seems to be under her thumb. It is obvious to me that he's basically thinking to himself, what would someone who is genuinely gangster do here when my woman is telling me to go out here and do this? And that's why he put himself into a position of carrying himself in ways that he is not normal for him, because he is more of an America's dad than the thuggish type of personality that his wife seems to have a strong affinity for.
Villainizing his wife for his own behavior is not it for me. If he is not comfortable in that relationship, leave. If she's not comfortable in that relationship,
he's a cock.
Leave.
He's a cock.
Actually, Joe,
he's hooked on her.
He's
hooked on her.
Joe.
I'm not excusing him. No one's I'm not excusing him.
Joe, have you heard the term beard?
Her.
Joe, have you heard the term beard?
Oh, you think she's his beard?
That has been going around for a long time. Okay, I don't know if he is or not. Even Bert Kreischer has told the story.
Speculate on someone's sexuality.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, but that, and I'm not saying
that's what we're doing here too.
Hold on, guys.
Take your turn, Millie. Beard or cuck? What do you want? I mean, it's the same thing.
What's a beard?
Why is the woman's responsibility for how their man acts? It's just such a ridiculous position.
True.
Beard is a reference to a gay guy who gets married, so that the wife makes it look like he's actually a real man,
or really straight.
a real man.
Or it's really straight because you have cross bearding.
It's a heterosexual.
Yes, that's what it is. I mean, it's.
Joe and I are going to disagree all day on terms here.
That's okay.
No worries.
That's okay.
All that I know, by the way,
I still respect you in the morning.
I just went to look up August Alsina because I didn't know who the individual was. If you guys go look at every single one of his pictures, he has a pose that he makes in every single picture. It's the same pose with it's like the model pose with a semi-open mouth, and it's like. Every single picture looks virtually identical. I had no idea who he was.
Every picture which she's with Will Smith, she's leaning publicly. She's leaning away from him. Every picture she's with August Alsina, she's leaning into him. It's very clear. It's very clear the type of man that she's looking for, and that Will Smith is not that. So I'm not saying that they don't have that they never had a loving relationship. I'm not trying to imply that at all. What the hell do I know?
They might not have had a loving relationship, but then they're adults and they need to take some.
What I'm saying though is, why would he publicly stay with a woman? Think about this: publicly stay with a woman who has stepped out on him, and then say, "Well, we have a different kind of open relationship where basically guys get to go and sleep with my wife." What type of genuine man actually takes that position unless he has no choice because he feels like he's hooked on this woman and he's going to do whatever it takes in order to keep her?
That's a professional relationship.
It might have to do with his relationship with his dad, though.
He has children too. There are children involved.
There's a very tormented relationship there too, because apparently his dad used to beat his mom when he was a kid, and so there's a lot there that he's kind of been working through. I think from what I've been hearing, from what I've been reading, this isn't originating from me. I'm not claiming that I have any.
That's very possible.
So I think that his concept of, I think that he's thought a lot about what in his mind makes a man, and a lot of that is not the father that he grew up with, from what I've heard. And so in that respect, there's the idea that a kid whose dad used to beat his mom oftentimes will grow up feeling like I couldn't be there to protect my mom from my dad. Dragon's Treasure. That's funny. April Fools.
I'm putting myself right now in this moment in Viva Frei's shoes and thinking to myself, he must be thinking to himself, I got into this business so I could explain the nuances of the law, constitutional law, criminal law to the public. And here I am analyzing Will Smith's sex life.
Just ask, hold on, Joe. Just ask him about Eddie Murphy. He had a conversation with Barnes and he learned things about Eddie Murphy, and David's never recovered. It's always fun with Viva. Fun with Fry.
The open secrets of Hollywood. And Hollywood as a whole. Now, but that's one thing. If Will Smith had any, I don't know, if people were questioning his orientation, I think it would have been a better known secret. I never heard it's widely known.
Bert Kreischer has talked about it literally, how Will Smith invited him to a movie and everything else, and his dad's like, Bert, he's trying to have sex with you. I mean, it's like a routine that's out there. This is not an unknown rumor. And I'm not saying
supposedly every guy in Hollywood is gay or has at least bisexual. That supposedly they say that about every male.
I wouldn't go that
in
far,
Hollywood. That's what they say. I don't know.
Well, that's a broad thing, because that one
that is a very broad statement.
It's hard to find someone who hasn't engaged. Let's put it that way.
Jada, whether or not Jada Pinkett, Jada's not to blame for Will Smith, and the relationship is one thing. Has everyone seen the second angle of Jada laughing it's?
You mean when he's walking back?
Yeah, no. Then he sits down and then she's like, "Oh," she does something like, "Oh yeah, he got it." It's I mean, you can't really tell what she said.
Angle from behind where you can see her head kind of moving back.
Yeah, she laughed when he said he slapped the shit out of me. She laughed. Everybody can laugh or something, but. Okay, but that's a really uncomfortable thing. A lot of times when something's very weird and out of sequence, a laugh does happen. In fairness,
but when he said he slapped the shit out of me, I thought it was still a joke. Then it was only when you heard him saying, "Get my wife's name out your mother." That you knew he's not. That's no longer a shtick because now he's making himself look unhinged.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Hollywood is a cesspool to be avoided at all costs. In my humble
and when Chris Rock, especially when he said, "Dude, I am."
Yeah.
You know, it was like, no,
dude, it's a G.I. Jane joke. I was like, yes, please.
Can we go over that? Because that's one of the stances I've been taking since the beginning with Nate. It was a compliment. The joke was a compliment because G.I. Jane
kind
is
of
a warrior.
compliment, kind of not.
No, it was. Like, I mean, G.I. Jane was fighting to become a SEAL or whichever military outfit, was harassed by all the men around her.
Yeah.
She shaved her own head to say, "Screw everybody, I'm going forward." And he literally, you can interpret it as she's fighting a condition like others fight cancer, and they shave their heads. There's actually head shaving parties and stuff, and they're seen as warriors. He did this in one perfect joke and stated that she was a warrior about a movie at the Oscars, which are about movies. It's not that bad. And I think that's why he's confused. He was like, this was a nice one.
And I think he said this was a nice one because he saw the reaction changing on Will Smith's and Jada's face. I think it was a, come on, guys. That was because earlier in the night, people had been making jokes about their relationship. And so I think it was a, come on, we just made fun of, the other couple who's up for, Javier Bardem, who's up for this award too. So now we're going on to you. You were the tail of that joke. It's pulling into this joke. But I think he responded, that was a nice one to them because he saw the face change. That's
that's what I didn't know that's what Chris Rock said. He said it's a nice one.
Yes, that was a nice one.
Oh,
I could have done a lot worse.
I think
like he could instead of G.I. Jane, he could have said Xerxes from 300. But because if you share my screen there, they share with you, Eric. That was
hang on. I want to get this super chat because it's money and I like that. You should appreciate that, Joe. But two, this is tabloid celebrity gossip with zero meaning to the real world. Are we milking it for views? Partly. Yes, I am. But you know why else I'm doing it? Because I don't feel like talking about a war. Because I could talk about something that in the big scheme of things, I can get heated and silly and whatever else, and it doesn't matter. I could take a break from the reality crashing in and have fun on a Friday.
Well, but not just
that's when I choose to do.
You're making a great point. Ukraine saved us from COVID, and Will Smith saved us from Ukraine
and gas prices and inflation.
But the flip side to that is, following that logic, you'd get more views from talking about Ukraine, so you're actually losing views. The viewership accusation is just it's misdirected. But yes, there's enough time in a stream in any event where you can get to the other stuff.
But you know what? I understand, but I'm never going to say that, gee, I'm not doing this for views. I'm doing everything for some degree of views. I mean, if nobody shows up, I'm not going to do it again.
Hold on. Beauty of pop culture.
Before I forget my thought, I want to point out the hypocrisy in this. Everybody getting out there and saying, making fun of someone for a medical condition is not fair game and warrants physical assault as a response. Alopecia is as much a medical condition as male pattern baldness is. And everyone has always made fun of the cue balls, Kojaks, the male pattern baldness. It's a medical condition. So anybody right now all that they're saying is they hold a double standard for women versus men, because had it been a joke about a man who was bald, make a joke about waxing his head, seeing your reflection in it. Male baldness is a medical condition as well. And
thank you. Thank you.
As someone who suffers, yes. Thank you.
Okay, good.
You're saying this is equality, and if men's heads are up for comment, women's heads are up for comment.
Actually, you know what? That makes for a perfect segue. I'll pretend to be a professional. One of the people who made being bald okay and cool, sadly, has retired from acting.
Yes,
Bruce Willis.
He's still good. He's still. I mean,
he's very handsome, dude. And he cut his hair. It was like when he was going bald, he was like, hell with it, and just cut his hair extremely short.
Suddenly
and
everyone was like,
bald.
and
he's like, he looks really good. And I'd say he was the first, at least white guy who did it, because black guys have been doing it forever and looking great. But Bruce Willis did it and really kind of, I think, helped things out and made it okay. Just stop trying to hide it and comb over or whatever. Just go with it. And what are you going to do?
I know. I was sad to see he was retiring.
Yeah, I have a story about that. I did not realize, and then articles have come out substantiating it, but I've because of my work with Rust, if you will, because I've been doing a lot of videos. I do have insiders there
because of his Hollywood connection. He didn't want to say it because of his Hollywood connection.
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily Hollywood, but anyway, somebody I've been talking to is directly involved with the Rust incident. Talked about how he was on the set with Bruce Willis, and Bruce was sitting in the open door of a helicopter, and his job was to throw a rifle. I don't know if it's an AR-15 or what it was, but some sort of assault rifle out onto the ground. They had all the pads laid out and everything, and for the shot, it was okay. Throw the rifle, and he just sat there frozen. Bruce, take two. Bruce, throw the rifle. Bruce, throw the rifle.
When was this, Eric? How recently?
I learned about this about 3 months ago, about this particular incident. So it's maybe even a month before that. I don't know exactly. It was post-Rust, but in the past few months. Anyway, he said that then somebody looked at him and said, yeah, it's really sad. He has dementia. Now, we know that the condition was released, but people don't know necessarily what it is, but something was going on. Now, this is getting back to where I started with the conspiracies, because you also brought up the conspiracy that Bruce Willis's condition was brought on by a certain medication that's going around right now. Mm-hmm. However, there's a problem with that logic. As much as I'd love to blame the Fauci juice, it may not be true, because there are people coming out saying that he was having cognitive issues in 2019 and prior. So if these things were existing, if there were problems, and they're going to hide that as much as they can, both for his sake, but also he's a freaking A-lister that you have in a movie. He's carrying your movie. They have him working 15 plus movies a year, and they're all straight to video, practically. They're going to keep this quiet. So as long as they can.
I heard the same stories, Eric, and this is where my own biases might come into play. When I started hearing Hollywood types coming out of the woodwork now saying, we've been noticing this for a while, everyone had their story. Part of me said, this is part of the, the cultural cover-up. Either exaggerate stories or make up stories from the past. Why hadn't we heard about them if it was so serious? If the stories of this type of behavior are in fact post 2020-ish, 2021, you could still support whatever theory you had there. If they in fact predate it, and by all accounts it looks like they do, well then then it's a degenerative issue. Maybe it was caused by too many head strikes or an undiagnosed stroke. But if all of those are that they're mentioning right now are in fact post, well then you're still going to allow people to conclude aphasia.
I don't disagree. It's just I just don't want to automatically land on that spot, because I think it's a dangerous thing to always say conspiracy. It's a very dangerous thing. Even though I might have this T-shirt saying that about censorship or another one about conspiracies, that doesn't mean that. I feel like you've got to be really, really careful.
For sure. Like, you do that, Bob Saget is an example where people are going to immediately jump to the conclusion, given specific jokes he made contemporaneously. The drummer for Foo Fighters,
that's an OD.
You should hold off there, because if it comes back he had 10 drugs in his urine, as they determined, pick your most likely conclusion. Bruce Willis, you're talking about aphasia, which might be a secondary consequence of a stroke. Strokes, yes, are a potential side effect, but it should be, one should be very reluctant to have that be a reflexive explanation for everything and anything right now, because bad things happen. They're going to happen, and everyone to whom they're going to happen have had.
All right, Joe, come back when you're done, man, if you will.
Yeah, okay.
Joe's going to desert us for an even better show.
I think it's an interesting commentary on the way our society still views mental decline, because we see that covering so much of the Tom Girardi case. It's going back years and years and years and years and years of cognitive decline that everybody seemed to be propping him up to be like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, and not addressing it. And that is distressing, because it allows, look at the Girardi case, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Especially, consider this too, Emily. I mean, you worked around the industry, being LA or whatever, or at least know people. They couldn't get insured if this shit was out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
So they absolutely, it had to be quiet. And David, I totally agree with your point. If I didn't have an insider telling me this about it happening, months ago, and honestly, when I heard, I didn't share it with anybody, because that's a terrible thing to do to somebody's reputation. And I deep down hoped that he was full of shit. Because I didn't want it to be true.
That's the thing with it being a terrible thing to do to someone. Why? I don't know. It bothers me that we pretend that this doesn't happen in aging instead of having some compassion for it. I think one of the greatest moments at the Oscars that got completely overshadowed was Lady Gaga and Liza Minnelli, because you could clearly see that Liza Minnelli was confused about where she was, and Lady Gaga was like, "No, I've got you." And there was I don't know why they were putting Liza Minnelli in that circumstance where she clearly seemed a bit out of sorts and confused, but seeing the compassion there, I don't know. It just, this particularly Hollywood's aversion to aging, I think does everyone a disservice, and that we're propping up people who are powerful like Tom Girardi when they are in cognitive decline.
That's a good question
in cognitive decline, and not acknowledging it is what it is. And it becomes this dirty thing that you're not allowed to talk about, but it happens to so many people, and not normalizing it leaves families with a lot of stress and anxiety and shame. And I don't know. I think we should be able to call it what it is without it being either reputationally damaging. I mean, I don't think you should be the leader of the free world if you have cognitive decline,
of course.
You also shouldn't be on a movie set with weapons. You also shouldn't be running a giant law firm where money's not getting to the clients. Like there needs to be
where clients are also trusting you with their rights and with their, with litigating their claims, whether they're civil or criminal. It's just that's a lot of responsibility.
You brought up a good point on that I wanted to grab before it goes away, because it involves Lady Gaga too. She performed with Tony Bennett, who was an advanced Alzheimer's dementia, in his last concert, and that was kind of a beautiful but also extremely controversial concert, because people were saying, "What are you doing propping up this feeble old man who could barely get through?" However, remarkably, in that concert, he never missed a beat or a single word or anything else. And I think that is tied with Alzheimer's, where like the past is clearer than what's going on around them. And maybe that added to her compassion with Liza Minnelli, like, just a compassionate person who's been dealing with, different people and understanding, being very sympathetic to their issues. What are your thoughts about that? And I'd love to put it out to everybody about, Tony Bennett and doing that last performance. Is it exploitive, or is it a kindness, or is it
or in the I don't know why I'm seeing it from the other side, but or in the moments of lucidity, are these individuals saying, I want to remain productive, I want to continue doing what I'm doing? And if someone thinks they're protecting them, you might actually be punishing them, because in as much as they have moments of lucidity versus moments of lack of, they want to remain productive and they don't want to just wither away and die in the basement. I mean, Jack Palance doing push-ups to the end of his life is one thing, but I look at it the other way, where setting aside whether or not you're unable to do what you're supposed to do, insurance is an interesting issue. I didn't even think of that. I have no doubt that Will Smith would love to remain, functional to his last days, as would Michael J. Fox and others.
Or Bruce Willis, even.
Who did I say?
Will Smith.
I meant Bruce Willis.
We'll see what the Academy.
Yeah, we'll keep time.
Is it? Are you protecting them? Is it fair to them, or are you denying them their underlying wish to remain as productive as humanly possible until they can no longer be?
And I don't know the answer. What I do know is that we don't have enough conversations about it, which makes it hard on a family by family basis. I think it makes it really hard to have these conversations about what is honoring someone and seeing them and still treating them as if they're them, but still also acknowledging that there is maybe an issue, a cognitive issue there that needs to be protective. Because again, with Tony Bennett, he went back into the good old days flawlessly. And when we're seeing stories of Tom Girardi, and I've been covering that case just so much that it comes top of mind, but it's like he was able to recall old stories, old cases, being on a film set with John Wayne when he was in high school, because that's how old he is, but being able to retell all these stories, but not also be able to function on the day-to-day. So that's I think very typical, is that somewhere the brain is just like, everything beyond this point is clear to me, everything forward. But we're dealing with that with Brian's stepmother, and she was in the hospital, and they're like, no, she's perfectly lucid. I'm like, okay, but what was she telling you? And they're like, oh, well, she's talking about this horse and this and that. I'm like, the horse was 15 years ago. And, yes, it seems very linear, but if you're not aware of the actual timeline, it can be very
context.
Yeah.
For sure.
What are your thoughts, Rita?
I mean, yeah, these are such complicated questions. I mean, and just having a diagnosis of something like dementia. I mean, having dealt with litigating trusts and estates kind of cases, you deal with those kinds of questions from time to time. And so just having a diagnosis of dementia is on its own usually not enough to say that this person does not have consent to create a trust or a will or whatever, or what have you. So, but when you start to see that decline over time, it's hard to figure out where exactly the line is that somebody no longer has capacity to make a certain decision for themselves. And then it's like, as a family member or somebody close to that person, it's also hard to sort of, figure out, like, am I capable of making this decision for this person also? I mean, and that's just assuming that everyone around that person has that person's best interests in mind and isn't thinking selfishly, because there's always that too. Like we saw that with Britney Spears, for example. Not that there was any kind of dementia involved there.
It's a perfect example, though, because they used the system, because you can see abuse in the system, which makes the conversation all the more complicated. Yeah. Because stories like that, I think, make people very nervous about a conservatorship need, or very nervous about that happening, especially if their intentions are genuine. They're like, but I don't want anyone to think this is abusive or this, that, and the other. So it's a tough conversation. But can we talk about something I think that's even more controversial?
Go on.
Oh, well, please. Well, hold on. By the way, I made everybody in here a co-host.
Speaking of controversial moves,
fracas may occur.
Very controversial move.
Goodbye, Eric. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm in danger for my own stream, because I can always be minimized to something less.
You don't want to be eaten.
I'm going to highlight all of the comments, every single one of them. Yes. No. I can't now. I can't get it out. Okay, go. What's the more depressing thing you said, Emily?
I said more controversial.
Oh, what's more controversial?
Alec Baldwin's wife is pregnant with child number 7.
Oh God!
I saw that on Instagram.
Is it really her though? Is she going to have the prosthesis? Let's get really deep in controversy.
There are so many jokes that I can't make because it's not in my brand or nature, but I'm thinking them. Someone else is going to think.
But we say that it was a result of a misfire.
I can't do it.
Or he's not shooting blanks.
Yes, he's not shooting blanks.
Okay, well there you have it. That was my first thought, but I didn't say it. Emily did.
It comes to mind quickly.
You're going to hell, Emily.
Probably.
You can just fire them off one after another.
But no, so like, no joke. Is there a discussion as to who the father is?
He announced that they were having a child together, that this is their 7th child. We know that men, can stay fertile quite longer after women. The timing of the thing feels very suspicious to me. I don't know if I've become that jaded after the Elizabeth Holmes trial, when I feel like maybe this is an empathy pregnancy where it's like, don't be mean to me.
Amber Heard.
Emily, there is a pattern before it, though. In fairness, there's those 6 other incidents that it could be like, well, this might just be a habitual thing. But I'm very curious. There's a whole Reddit on her. If you want to have some fun, go check it out. The r/Hilaria Baldwin. Hilaria, he was born in Boston, Massachusetts. You've got to look at Kyle Dunnigan. He did a fantastic piece on Baldwin. Anyway,
how is she allowed to continue the Hilaria situation after the cultural appropriation that went on there?
I don't understand that.
It's a question of hypocrisy. It's a question of hierarchy. They are within the rank of the hierarchy where they can get away with it. But now, hold on.
It gets worse. I got to finish this one, David. Hold that thought. Seriously. They had multiple kids with surrogates. The Reddit is all about her wearing prosthesis and popping it off, and then a week later showing her perfect tummy because she's a yoga instructor. Look it up. Now you can go.
Okay, be careful though, because
I had to get controversial.
Could be a source of defamation.
I said a Reddit said that this happened.
Part of her appeal is like her yoga, workout stuff on her Instagram. Yes. Like that's what she likes to, So just make sure that there's, some basis for that.
And I know there are surrogates. She has admitted surrogates, and they kind of have to be when you have children born 4 months apart. Gets difficult with biology.
Realize they had that many that kids that close in age.
Yes.
I don't pay that
Two
much
of them.
attention to it. And again, moving to the South, there's definitely more large families here than I was ever exposed to in Southern California, where having more than 2 kids seems to be cost prohibitive. But it's 7's a lot. And the timing again is so confusing.
Well, how many months pregnant? How many months pregnant does she say she is?
That hasn't been shared.
Yeah.
Just that there's another Baldwinito on the way. A Baldwinito.
Baldwinito on the way.
I'm sorry. By the way, do they have names for their kims? Baldwinitos? What is this term?
Yes, the children all have names. I don't know what they are offhand, but they do.
That's the Latinized version of Baldwin, even though they're 0% Latino.
Ito means little. So
okay, little. But no, so they have not branded their children as Baldwinitos.
Well, apparently she did.
I mean, maybe
it's part of her Espanol heritage.
And the chat's asking, I don't know how old she is. That is a very good question based on
well, let's ask the Google box.
She seemed to indicate that it was kind of a surprise pregnancy, which is interesting because you don't get a surprise pregnancy with a surrogate unless there's something else going on in their relationship.
Well, and maybe it is her, and maybe she is 38. Pregnant, and it's a surprise. I don't know.
She's 38, apparently, according to
I'm
this
sorry.
website.
This is the picture that they're showing. Yes. This is that they're posting. Get that reflection out.
Mm-hmm.
Hilaria Baldwin shows baby bump. I mean, now this is tasteless. I'm sorry. This is they're out now celebrating life.
Yes. Well, they've been doing it the whole time, dude. He went Christmas shopping immediately after the shooting.
Yep.
Oh my God, they were the most tone deaf couple I've ever seen in my life.
it's like it's a blessing. Full stop. In light of a tragedy that you caused, it might be a blessing that you should keep to yourself or let other people break, so that it doesn't look like you're rubbing your blessing in the face of someone who is now grieving still through their tragedy.
Yes.
Just terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when have you seen Alec Baldwin shut up? Because you know how you could handle this whole situation, Alec Baldwin? Follow Dave Halls. Do what Dave Halls has done. Have you heard a word out of Dave Halls? The only thing piping out of his direction is his attorney.
Yeah, Dave Halls listens to his lawyers.
Yes.
Yep. He just boop. And by the way, same thing with Hannah. Hannah released a statement that I got a hold of in reply to one thing, and her lawyer put it out. Yeah.
Through the lawyer. Again, through the lawyers is the only thing that makes sense. But Baldwin is the smartest person in the room, you have to remember. And as the smartest person in the room, even the lawyers aren't smarter. He reminds me of all of the fraud defendants that I ever had who always thought they were smarter than their defense attorneys, which made my job as a prosecutor a joy and a pleasure.
That must have been just so delectable.
This reminds me of a story when we were kids. 10 years ago, we had a dog that my parents had to euthanize. It was a bull mastiff that was psychotic. I mean, bona fide psychotic. If the door were open a crack, the dog would run out of the house and attack the first living thing it saw. He attacked 2 kids. And then after the second one, they had to put him to sleep. Wow. He attacked a neighbor's kid somewhere. And then we had to euthanize him. The next day, the kid who got bitten by our dog comes down to our house with his dog in his hands. We're all sitting there. So the kid's young and has no social awareness and no concept. Couldn't even understand what would be heartbreaking about the fact that we're all sitting there sobbing our brains out. When was the tsunami? This was in 2005. So it's a long time ago. Jeez. This kid comes down totally unaware, carrying his dog. This is like what Alec Baldwin is doing, except he's a full-grown man and his wife showing off her baby bump with her 5 other kids, with knowing damn well that
you mean there's a child without a mother?
A child without a mother and a husband without a wife. And that's this.
Yeah. And a child that's not going to have a full sibling.
No, again, that child will be alone. You're correct. Or have a step sibling or what. Yeah.
Sibling. But maybe. I mean, I don't know. That kind of loss and that kind of sudden loss changes people. And I think it can make people very afraid to want to have more kids, because then you've got more risk that something horrible is going to happen.
And I'm
he set it up too. Okay, I haven't talked about this with any of you, but did you look into the arbitration claims that Baldwin put forth, Emily?
Yes.
What do you think about that whole thing of trying to get Matthew Hutchins and crew to sign off on completing the movie in her memory? That was a very weird circumstance that we're going to bring.
That wasn't weird to me at all.
put the band back together, go to New Mexico, finish a movie. Yeah, except the
filtered
after
through the lens of Alec Baldwin and filtered through the producer that doesn't want to get sued for not finishing the movie and doesn't want to put out the money for not finishing the movie. It makes perfect sense in Alec Baldwin's mind that is what he would think of first is.
Okay, well, I was thinking like a normal human mind. It was odd. So fair enough.
This is why it's odd. It makes sense from the perspective of Baldwin as a producer and as someone who has, very self-serving tendencies to say, but for me, I need to finish it. This was my comeback. This was my moment.
My Unforgiven.
My movie. Me. And then going, and we'll do it in her memory. This makes perfect sense from Alec Baldwin's mind. But the indemnity is going to be very interesting if he's indemnified as an actor based on that contract. I'm interested to see that.
Yeah,
it depends on the amount of liability on his part. I think that's where the criminal comes in, because if and here's the problem. Okay, I think that it's so problematic. There are so many issues that there might be a case that nobody is charged, and I'll tell you why. Because Baldwin has the handoff that, hey, I'm not the pro. I was given the gun, blah, blah, blah. I did not expect it to be there. That's not my job, blah, blah, blah. Then you have the COVID protocols that kept Hannah Reid from being able to perform her job. Well, I mean, there's enough that substantiates that.
I think they could have made a different choice, though. They could have had her in the church and somebody else out. But
I totally agree. But that helps identify her, doesn't it?
Yes,
she was prevented from doing her job.
Oh no, yeah, I think it definitely indemnifies her.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. And then you have the whole Video Village being down, which really throws it. Oh yeah, absolutely, because camera crew was off, thrown out that day, and I interviewed the first AD that turned down the job. I mean, not first. The first AC, who was replaced by Lane Looper. So she's friends with Lane Looper. I interviewed her, and she was talking about that no, they should not have continued. When the camera crew walked off, it should have been redone. They brought in just people from town. Video Village was down because that member of the crew had also walked, and she would Helena would not have been in the church if Video Village was up. She would have been at Video Village. And ironically, Lane Looper, and this is part of the reason I think it came out, he would have been the one who got shot, because he would have been in there pulling the focus. They're focus pullers. That's their job. So that's really, really some fascinating elements. But then you have that, you have all of that issue. And then it's confusing too about Halls, because Halls is technically not an armorer. I've always had issues with him being in the chain of custody, but that's been argued out. I mean, literally with my show partner, Mark Robert, Mark is saying, oh, that's BS. First ADs handle guns all the time. They absolutely do. I've seen it. And then if you look at the SAG guidelines,
they shouldn't.
Well, no, the SAG guidelines are not clear. And so I'm actually talking to armorers who are saying that's BS. And then I'm looking, but then you look at the SAG guidelines, they're saying, or designated person. Right. Well, you're screwed. And then Baldwin in the interview said, no, it had to be the property person or first AD. Remember, he said that was Stephanopoulos. So that is very confusing. So now we've got just a swirl of confusion of who do you charge?
Either the person holding the gun or the person loading the gun is where I, as a prosecutor, that's the line I would be looking down. Who loaded the gun?
Hannah
who brought
Reid.
the bullets onto set? Who was holding the gun? So that's
wherever the bullet came from, I think is the one silver bullet, if you will, that'll be the clincher. Whoever brought that live bullet on the set is really the liable party most of all.
And Hannah Reid's lawsuit reads like a conspiracy theory.
It does.
And there are problems with her lawsuit. There are major problems with her lawsuit.
I just want to know.
It's fascinating to read them.
But it's not a suit. If you read it, it's like, well, wait a minute. It's against Seth Kinney, and then there's
it's more like a long complaint of like drama.
Yes, I feel like it was more like an alibi to put something on the record to get your story out in public through a lawyer. And you guys are lawyers, am I wrong?
Lawsuits are protected by litigation privilege. So statements made in lawsuits and in the course of lawsuits are not defamatory. So it makes sense to me why that lawsuit was written for public consumption versus being written for court. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, with lawsuits, we see it with like the Nike Satan's shoes lawsuit. Nike sued Mischief over those sneakers, not so much because they wanted the sneakers not to get sold, but because they wanted the headline picked up that they were suing so people would understand they weren't the ones making the sneakers, because people.
So it doesn't dilute the trademark.
Brand confusion.
Right. So they had technically grounds to sue, but that was more of a PR piece, because the headline is Nike says they're not involved with the sneakers doesn't pick up the same way as Nike sues over Mischief. And so I think it was 90% PR. It settled like a week and a half later.
Don't you also have to sue to protect your brand though? Like if somebody goes out there using your trademark or your brand and you don't sue, you'll lose rights to it over time, and that's happened.
But it's resale, so they were modified and resold. So is it really a source of goods? Like there's a lot of trademark conversation to be had around source of goods, and if you can modify something and resell it, like if you buy a Birkin bag and then paint it and then resell it, is that really using someone else's trademarked property? But we could go completely left.
Oh, I'm way out of depth on any of it. That's why you guys are here.
I just want to know one thing. Did Alec Baldwin come home to Hilaria and say, we are making a baby because we need to distract from this story, and if we come up with another story, it'll make us look good. People will have sympathy on us.
I don't know.
Is that how
it could be? I wouldn't put it past him.
That was my first thought, because we've seen plenty of babies in the course of litigation as a way to play for public sympathy.
Hilaria, I can't do an Alec Baldwin impression. But
Kyle Dunnigan. Everybody watch Kyle Dunnigan. Just trust me on this. Kyle Dunnigan, his Alec Baldwin, it's like spit take worthy. It is hilarious. He has like a little ball that he has for Hilaria. He's like, excuse me. Oh God, he's so good at it.
I can do it. I can bring up Bronco Bushes. Just like the left here, show message. Okay.
Yes.
I want to say something about this. I don't believe that the moon landing was faked, but I understand the arguments, because I've been looking. I need to understand one thing.
We're going way back.
I love Stanley Kubrick as well, David. Let's celebrate.
There's only one thing that I don't understand, is that one of the astronauts, his name was Rip. I'll have to Google his name.
Buzz Aldrin.
No, not Buzz Aldrin. The one who said, we would love to go back, but we destroyed that technology, and it's very difficult to recreate. I don't understand how that makes sense. And if nobody knows, let me Google it and find it right now, just so nobody thinks I'm totally, because I don't know who the astronaut was.
I've never heard that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
don't
know either.
Destroyed.
Mr. Bytes might know, honestly. He loves space and space things.
Hold on.
I love space things in like the Doctor Who Star Wars realm of space things.
Oh,
like real space things.
Well, you need to watch For All Mankind then, because
there's a great Doctor Who story.
Show. Yeah.
There's a great Doctor Who story that deals with real space. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's fascinating. There was a couple missing episodes of Doctor Who. And
old who?
Old, like in the 60s.
Old who? Okay.
They were missing, but here's the coolest part. They actually, the airwaves went out into space, and they've been bounced back, and they've actually retrieved the show from bouncing back. I swear to God, this is true. It happened like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's just such an amazing, crazy thing. Of course, it makes you think, oh my God, look at all the stuff that we spit out there into the universe. Is it going to come back another way? You know, all those World War II speeches and fun things.
His name was Donald Pettit, or Pettit, Pettit. I looked, and I'll send this. You can go look at it. There's a point in an interview where he says, we destroyed the technology to go to the moon, and it's difficult or impossible to recreate. Well, I want to hit send.
That's very odd.
It's very odd. And I know nothing more than that.
Share it, Dave. You're a co-host. Everybody has.
I won't let me send. What's going on here?
Oh, here we go. They destroyed the plans for the Saturn engine, according to this. It's hard to build as people with those crafts no longer practice, so it's cheaper to design a new engine. Okay.
But if they can't reproduce that to go back to the moon, how are they talking about going to Mars? Like,
well, I don't know.
Maybe he needed to talk to Elon Musk or something, and he'd be like, "I got you."
No, it's an old interview. Anyways, I'll say there are a few arguments that are interesting. I've watched a few videos debunking a lot of the typical arguments. The one was the flag wouldn't be flying or waving.
I know, but it was propped up by a wire, and they did that deliberately because it would be falling, and they wanted the flag to be up, so it was intentionally there. And then there's the flag is still there, and somebody's pointing out that they can't recreate the pyramids. Actually, yeah, I think they figured that out. It was a matter of building up giant mounds and then kind of building them upside down is a weird principle, or whatever it was. It's like laying out the rock and then putting up the dirt next to it and then laying out more and then putting more. I forget. I don't know all of it.
And then there was issues about the lighting being unnatural looking, multiple shadows. That I'm thoroughly convinced by the explanation, which is there's light deflecting off of everything. The argument that you couldn't see the stars in space, which I'm also, weak argument, because the explanation is that the ground lighting blew out the specks of stars in the sky.
Also, what kind of cameras did they have back then? The camera tech is way less than what we all have on our desks right now, right?
The only one that I couldn't understand is they destroyed the technology. Why would they have even done that? Period. How could they not recreate it?
Space race was over, man. We made it to the moon.
I don't know.
Union collapsed. We won.
I will be honest and say I have put very little thought into it, other than to say, okay, so that's a suspect. I do know that they say Stanley Kubrick filmed it on a set. That's a very common one out there. I'm not going to say it's true or false. I'm going to lean and just I'll go with the dreams that I hope that we landed on the moon, and I'll just default to the side of hope.
One of the arguments was that it would be harder to fake than to do, but I'm only thinking of that guy who does Blaine, who was trying to figure out a way to break the record for holding his breath underwater. And he was talking about injecting his body with oxygen filled blood, having he said, it's easier to train and figure out how to do it. That was it. It was an interesting theory. As someone had mentioned it, I looked into it, but I watched a few videos with the kids over the weekend
Well, there are freaks like Blaine, you mentioned him, and then there's Wim Hof. Have you seen what that nut's done?
Wim Hof is fascinating.
Who is it, and what did he do?
Oh, he like wears shorts and barefoot to Mount Everest, things like that. I mean, he just sits there on ice for like days.
In the biohacking community, the anti-inflammation, cold immersion, the biohacking community is something I'm well familiar with. The Dave Asprey and Ben Greenfield side of cold immersion, but Wim Hof has a breathing mechanism for cold immersion and all the health benefits that come with cold immersion. But it's fascinating stuff. He's a quirky dude,
and he's damn near superhuman. I'm just gonna say, don't try what he does at home. Don't try what David Blaine does either.
There's a way to learn what he does. He teaches that. He has people come out on retreats and do cold immersions with him and stuff. You get a bunch of dudes in a freezing cold bathtub, all like breathing and smacking themselves. It's very much like Real Housewives of New Jersey type shit. It's fascinating. Different world of the internet. Different world of the internet. But we at our house, like the kind of conspiracy theories we talk about is, was the dream speed run faked and things like that. Like those are we lean towards internet conspiracy theories, but my teen just started reading 1984. So that's been fascinating conversations.
Ooh, that.
Well played. Kubrick is such a perfectionist. He went to the moon to film it. Yeah, I could see that. Kubrick. I would not want to work with it. I would not want to work with the dude. Matthew Modine has had plenty to say about the life on Full Metal Jacket. Nightmare. Speaking of flat Earth, remember the guy who built the rocket to prove, the flat Earth theory?
Yeah, and it crashed and died in it?
Right. Apparently, according to his family or whatever, he may have been putting out the flat Earth stuff just to get publicity for people to follow it, and he didn't really believe in that. So that's where it gets weird too. So there's a conspiracy on the conspiracy.
I love that.
Did he really die?
Oh, did he die? I don't know. Maybe he proved it was flat and kept traveling. Maybe he's on Mars. Maybe he's on the dark side of the moon. I don't even know. It's crazy. Okay, somebody's saying, David, watch Operation Loon.
Operation Loon.
Doc, so you could understand it.
I'll take it.
Yes, this is tinfoil hour. We're having fun.
I mean,
are there actually any news? You know what? There was a super chat earlier asking about an actual case.
Is there any actual law news, people? What? Yeah, but it's all either politics.
Oh, here it is. This I don't know what this is.
I don't know what this is.
Ubiquity versus Brian Krebs.
It was about a hack, and I don't. Hold on, I'm going to go back. I don't know what it is either. It was 2020. That's a year old.
Oh, okay.
It was about a leak. Ubiquitous. Hold on, let me just pull it up here. Security professional at Ubiquity helped the company. Blah, blah, blah. Whistleblower. Okay, hold on. On January 11, Ubiquity, a major vendor of cloud-enabled Internet of Things (IoT) devices such as routers, network, video, disclosed that a breach involving a third-party cloud provider had exposed customer account credentials. Now, a source who participated in the response to that breach alleges Ubiquity massively downplayed a catastrophic incident to minimize the hit to its stock price, and that the third-party cloud provider claim was a fabrication. That's from 2021. So I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
I've been following. Did you guys read the Bungie lawsuit?
No,
but I know that you and Rick Hogue have been talking about it.
It's very well written and highly entertaining. I've been following the Bungie lawsuit, and there's a new Fortnite lawsuit. Epic Games is getting sued for stealing someone's choreography again. But the Bungie lawsuit is suing a bunch of does. Bungie is a video game developer. They developed Destiny 2. The Destiny 2 online video game streaming community is a very highly engaged community, kind of like the law nerds are a highly engaged community. And they have a third-party company that does their DMCA takedowns when people use mostly their music, it seems, outside of their rights to allow people to stream their gameplay on YouTube and Twitch. So they did a number of DMCA takedowns at the beginning of March. In the middle of March, someone they allege that got pissed over those DMCA takedowns started pretending to be Bungie and issuing DMCA takedowns on the biggest streamers of Destiny 2 and Bungie's own YouTube channel. And then Bungie, for pages, their lawyers go on listing everything they did to try to get YouTube to stop it. And YouTube's like, well, we need the email address that issued the DMCA takedowns. And they're like, but somebody's pretending to be us. We don't have the email address. They're pretending to be us. Our company didn't issue these takedowns. And they're like, well, we need the email. So it goes on. And it gets to the point where somebody emails them back and said, did you submit a help ticket? And you can feel everyone's soul dying while you're reading this lawsuit of they're going on for days trying to get help because they're getting copy strikes across their community. Bungie, the company, is getting flamed on Twitter nonstop by their own very engaged community. Bungie's trying to get YouTube to stop it.
Oh my God.
Like, did you submit a help ticket? And they're like, ah!
I've dealt with YouTube support before, and trust me, it can be this logic trap you've ever. Get your channel taken down sometime. No, don't have that. But
yeah, your channel gets taken down. Well, did you go into your YouTube studio to try to connect with?
Go ask.
It's gone.
It's so staggering. It's proof that artificial intelligence is artificial.
Well, it's
and not very intelligent.
Right. No. This lawsuit points out a great issue within the DMCA system that anyone can claim, if they're willing to lie under penalty of perjury, anyone can claim to be a company and issue these DMCA takedowns. The best part of the lawsuit, though, and I love the lawyers who wrote it because they wrote it with a fair bit of sass. The best part of this lawsuit is the manifesto that the person issuing the DMCA takedowns wrote to a bunch of the streamers who stream Destiny. And they're like, we're not trying to hurt your channel, but this is our manifesto. So the manifesto's in the body of the lawsuit. And then they spend pages and pages ripping YouTube over their illogical, draconian clusterfuck of a DMCA system. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And they had to
I've suffered that.
Emily, they had to file the lawsuit with the does because YouTube's like, well, we can't, or Google's like, we can't tell you who issued these takedowns without legal process. And they're like, fine, fuck it. Here's legal process. We're filing the suit. Let's go. So they're coming for the people issuing the fake DMCA strikes, but it's
good.
Wild.
Somebody needs to, because there are people out there who are actively doing this. And I feel like there should be penalties. I mean, you could take away somebody's channel. Like, there's a reason I have 3 channels, folks.
At one
it's you can, if you make 10 cents per shot just claiming videos and claiming the monetization, because they don't necessarily all go for strikes, they just go for claiming the monetization for abusive means. It's a good business if you rely on people's apathy and laziness to challenge them, and what goes into being required to challenge them.
And the fact that, for a large company, I mean, Bungie's a large video game developer, that YouTube doesn't have a, hey, what are your official emails that DMCA takedowns come from? They could put that in YouTube Studio where, hey, if I'm issuing a takedown for my content, it's coming from this email or this email. Everything else is fake. It doesn't seem like it would be that hard for YouTube to implement that, so you don't get people faking that they're the company to do these DMCA takedowns, because it seems legitimately that it caused this company not just a bunch of money to fix it, but loss of reputation among their streaming community, because streamers who had been working with this game developer to stream Destiny 2 content are all of a sudden getting multiple strikes on their channel, and the company's like, we're trying to fix it. One of the older tweets about it is the company's like, this isn't us, and you can see Richard Hogue under the comment being like, but is it though? But is it really not you? Like, are you just saying it's not you? Days before this lawsuit was filed. So you can see the community turning on Bungie, and I think it actually did cause them damage, but they're not suing YouTube. I'm waiting for someone to sue YouTube and Google over their failure to enforce their own policies with regard to malicious takedowns and copyright system. I don't know how you do that, but it
Section 230, man.
It will happen. But what if you sue them for not enforcing their own policies on people who abuse the system?
Oh, are there mandatory arbitration clauses in our YouTube terms of service?
Oh, I should probably look.
For alleged breaches?
Sure, I'm
Joe,
sure
you're drinking 7-Eleven coffee again, aren't you?
Of course, it's the best coffee on the planet. It's the most underrated coffee ever.
By the way, there was a chat that was brought up earlier about the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial.
Yes.
I know.
I'm on that. If anyone wants to watch that, you can come to my channel.
No, I know.
Strong.
I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. You need to go to it.
But I'm going to be doing from soup to nuts. So, but I know Emily did say that she wanted to do some highlights.
I will do some. I'm not going to do the entire.
But if you want to see from beginning to end, come on over. I am prepping the channel for it.
Alita, you might want to try the software. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
What's the expression soup to nuts in the context of a Johnny Depp trial?
I don't know. From beginning to end.
Oh, man. As long as it's not poodles in beds. Okay.
I was going to say poop to nuts. But Alita, when is the trial?
It starts April 11th.
Do you think might get pushed because of the discovery stuff that's going on with the photos?
Oh, maybe. I know that's the one big question. So for anybody that doesn't know, there's like this really actually very big controversy. So, one of the big reasons why people jumped to Amber Heard's side on this was because she shared photos of herself all bruised and blah, blah, blah. And so of course that's a very material part of this case is Johnny Depp says, I need to be able to not just see the photos, I need to be able to see the metadata on these photos. We need to know that these photos are accurate because there have been other indications elsewhere in this lawsuit and in the Sun lawsuit, by the way, that have shown that we cannot trust these photos on their own. Like we need a forensic analysis of this. And so he's entitled to that because he has to be able to put on his case just like any other party. And so she was supposed to turn those over by late November 2021. By early March, they're coming back and they're saying, we still don't have it. We don't have shit. And then, late March even and
properly, like their motion, I was shocked.
Oh my God.
I was shocked at the fucking that's going on.
Yes.
The Discovery gamesmanship. And I'm
yes.
waiting for the court to issue a smackdown and just say the photos aren't coming in. But I don't think they will. I think the court will say, okay, but you need more time to do this because he's entitled to the photos and he's entitled to the metadata and you can't just question it. I mean, that's something that we're going to see so much more for people who are like, oh, I want to go to law school. I'm like, get a computer science background because how evidence works and how digital evidence works is something not all lawyers understand, which we saw in the Rittenhouse case, but there needs to be people with strong backgrounds in how this works to understand not just how it gets admitted into evidence, but also how you extract it, how you preserve it, how you analyze it. And it's a huge, digital evidence is a huge benefit and a huge problem.
You mean don't do the Rittenhouse thing and just have a cop pull video off Twitter and
pinch the Zoom and just be like, no, it's
when the judge knows more about it, but says I don't know anything. Then he gave the best explanation out of anybody there of what was really going on,
which is.
But hold on,
shout out to millibytes.
These are photos. These are presumably digital photographs. They're not taken with a film camera.
Correct.
So
correct.
Just the original snapped picture on whatever device it is will give you the metadata, presumably.
Well, that hasn't.
But that can be changed. And hopefully there's a forensic trail. But you also have the police body cam footage that helps go against what she said. So there are some problems with her claims. I'll be very careful with what I say, but I think people have brought up very real questions about her veracity. Yeah. I don't know. She could be, as truthful as can be, but
she took
I would not invest in her.
And if you're truthful, then why the gamesmanship?
Yes,
with turning over the digital evidence, because she needs it to prove her case too. She's cross-claiming him, so she's going to need that for her case as well. Why not turn it over? And then the extractions are being done with non-licensed devices, and things can't be read. And Johnny Depp's already paid, tens and tens of thousands of dollars to his forensic team, and they're like, we're out of time now to get an extraction and do a forensic analysis on it. And it seemed like that kind of gamesmanship is the goal here, but the case has been going on quite a while. I'm waiting for the judge to pop up on that. It's just gonna
Alita, I was dreaming of going down to Virginia for the trial and live streaming it like the Ottawa convoy, but it's going to be open to the public, correct?
It's going to be open to the public. You can't bring in any kind of cell phones or computers or anything, though. So people will not be able to live tweet from the courtroom, but they can, when they go outside, kind of like when Joe watched.
What about Ghislaine? I thought as a journalist they could live tweet if they got that permission, or is that a New York thing?
Depends on
the
particular district court.
But how on earth? I presume this is going to be jam packed. Do you have any idea as to how they're going to determine who gets in?
They've determined one camera for a feed.
I think it's actually two. Because it's like I think from what I was reading, it sounded like there's actually going to be like two, but it's all one camera pool. Like everybody's getting the same.
Is Law and Crime going to claim it and try to take you down?
Court TV is the main circulator for this one. But it's going to be interesting. Maybe I'll get my own demand letter.
in live streaming all these trials, we get a real flavor for the vast distinction in how a trial runs depending on the nature of the judge. Emily here is pointing out the importance of the judge smacking down about these discovery shenanigans. And it's true. Sometimes you'll have some judges who'll just sit back and let the parties do whatever gamesmanship they want to engage in. And that's often, not always, but often reflective of how they run their courts. They either let people get away with crap or they don't. That just tends to be the nature of the judge.
And in this case, there have been, I don't even know how many motions to compel have been heard in this case. There are so many to the point that they appointed a court-appointed conciliator to manage the discovery between them, and still, like, they have not been particularly successful with that. And also the conciliator, what's that?
I still can't pronounce that. I always think conciliary. I'm like, we got
I do. With a little bit nose.
I'm not even 100% confident if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
No, conciliatory?
Yes.
The conciliator. But I don't know. I'm just gonna roll with it, right?
But it's a bad sign. Isn't it a bad sign for the trial if they're letting them get away with so many games that we're going to see the same type of idiocy we saw in Rittenhouse,
be spicy.
where it's just going to be like, let's fly by the seat of our pants and figure out what we're going to do, as it comes along. And the rules might vary depending on how strong an argument you make. And I'm not going to seem very consistent. I get very frustrated by that. The same way if you're a baseball fan, you want an umpire who's going to call the same strike zone all the time. And if you want to call it always high, you want to give that high strike, fine. If you want to have a very wide strike zone all the time, that's fine. But just be consistent so we know what's going to happen, as opposed to morphing from one situation to another where we have no idea what you're doing. That's the sign of a poor judge, in my opinion. A poor trial. Yeah, you want the consistency.
There's so much money in this trial. and there's so many attorneys. It just, and you've got, you know, a celebrity studded witness list. It is going to be, I think the only way this case can ever be resolved in the public is to let the trial be public. I'm glad that they are.
Yeah. Yes.
Because
who are some of the witnesses? Who are the witnesses we're expecting?
Elon Musk.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, he is. James Franco is another witness. Who is for what's his name from the MCU?
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany. Yes, thank you.
He played Vision.
Yes, yes.
They've got some spicy
text. Who's Paul Bettany? Which side is he on? Johnny Depp.
He's on Johnny Depp's side.
If they've already scheduled this and they've already summoned the witnesses, and I don't know if they have a what's the word, a schedule for the trial. I mean, postponing it or delaying it, it might be on the one. It'll let down the public, and I don't know how you can reorganize all this with all the celebrities. So there might be they might be playing on the fact that it would be virtually impossible to reschedule at this point to try to get away with chicanery before the trial.
Which they might very well be, in which case they should either be sanctioned or the judge should not allow any of that photographic evidence in.
Yes.
And I could see the judge very real going, okay, we're going to trial. None of this.
I mean, look, strategically speaking, I'm doing that on purpose. Strategically speaking, exclude the photos. She'll just come in and testify regardless. So you lose the photographic evidence, but you'll still have the testimonial evidence.
Yeah, I think actually a better remedy would actually almost be to allow the photos in and to allow Johnny Depp's side to comment freely on the whole process and on the fact that you cannot trust those photos. Because even just looking at the photos from day to day after these injuries, how they've like shifted around. It reminds me, actually, the more that I've thought about this, it reminds me of Robin Hood Men in Tights. What's his name? The king who is like has a mole that's like shifting around on his face the entire time. Like it kind of reminds me, because it's like her bruise shifts from here to there to like, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. There are a lot of questions.
It feels like she didn't have the person on set who does the consistency. Like they, when on set you have
supervisor.
The what?
Script supervisor.
Is that who does the consistency day to day?
Yeah. They take a picture of everybody and says, you're holding the drink in your wrong hand, or it was on the table.
In fairness to Amber Heard, I haven't seen these photos, but bruises do sometimes start to sag. The blood starts off high and then it starts to run down.
Yeah. Okay, so here it is. Announcement. David is pro Amber Heard.
Anybody who takes a dump on someone's bed is bad in my books. And then blames it on the dog. Whoa. You fart, you blame it on the dog, not your dump. You don't blame your own dump on the dog. That's just cowardice.
There was a guy I played water polo with in high school, because in high school I played on a men's water polo team because they didn't have a women's water polo team and Title IX is a thing. But he
not anymore. Ask Leah Thomas. Oh, sorry.
He would take a dump on the opposing team's floor in their locker room every single game. And I never understood it. I still don't understand it. But it's a thing. The pooping places, I don't understand. It's very odd. Every game.
Very strange.
It's very strange. Every game. You learn a lot when you're on my female friends didn't quite act the same way as the men's water polo team, but you learn a lot. I was well prepared to be a mother of boys. They don't.
Is there a rivalry between Team Heard and Team Depp in this thing?
I don't think rivalry is the right word. It's
not exactly rivalry. Probably more like a very, very passionately arguing sort of.
It's a Me Too. Two camps. It's Believe Her, Me Too thing.
Depp. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ugly. I mean, I think the first one who came out was Doug Stanhope, who came out on Johnny Depp's side, but I'm sorry, Johnny Depp has lost everything. I mean, if there's anybody, if he is correct in his claims, oh my God, he has genuinely suffered. I mean, we're talking $50 million contracts, kicked out a Fantastic Beasts. Meanwhile, she's just going right along, cast into every movie. Her career has done nothing but grow, while his has been completely contracted. And if it is proven to be a lie, how do you unring that bell? Because I feel like others should be punished as well. It is J.K. Rowling for trying to stand up for the guy and say, hey, I don't know, let the courts decide. She got thrashed. So, she's already has her turf problem. Yeah. And then you have that problem. And it's just a sad, horrible.
Yeah. And I will say that it's also come to my attention that since he was fired from his role as Captain Jack Sparrow, he still dresses up and goes to children's hospitals and acts as Captain Jack Sparrow. So like, that he's getting zero financial benefit for like kind of promoting that franchise for doing that. And considering anybody getting fired from any kind of a job, like, would you want to do anything related to that job afterwards? Probably not. So he's going out of his way to go dress up as Captain Jack Sparrow and act as him for the benefit of these children. It to me personally, that is pretty impactful. And I think that really speaks to his character as an individual. It doesn't necessarily prove or disprove anything as to the defamation in the lawsuit or
to me, that proves
he never
hit. That proves to me he never hit her. There's no way. He can't. I'm Team Depp all the way. I don't want to hear from you Team Heard people, okay? Okay, Viva defending Amber all the time. I'm sick of hearing you coming here saying, oh my God, her bruises managed to fall down from her eye to her chin because that's the way blood flow. No, there's no blood flow like that, okay? Just not true.
She has no blood. You're saying she's bloodless, Joe, is that it?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because you see the difference between Johnny Depp still going out and doing legitimate charity work and Amber Heard lying about donating money to charity.
Yes.
It's like you see very different behavior on the two sides. And I think the problem is social media has lost nuance, but there can be a benefit of the doubt. Like, I lean towards believability, but when there are questions should be allowed to be asked. That's what attorneys do every day. It's what district attorneys do every day. Is there corroboration here? Can this be filed? It's why the Cosby case originally wasn't filed. Social media believes it should have been filed a decade later, but when you look at the charging decisions that have to be made, there wasn't corroboration sufficient for a charging decision, which is why they didn't do it. That doesn't mean you don't believe somebody. Believing somebody and proving it in court are two very different things. Yeah. And I think we've lost that nuance of discussion because if you're like, well, this seems a little bit off, like with Sherry Papini's case, this seems a little bit off. People got screamed down for questioning her kidnapping. And here we are years later with her being charged by the feds for lying about her kidnapping. We have to be able to have enough nuance to have conversation of saying, I understand they're saying this happened. These things seem off. Can we have a conversation about it?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be all one way or the other.
I'm predicting what I predicted from the beginning of the trial. Both are going to come out looking bad from the trial. It's going to be a nominal victory for either, if any. But
speaking of which, are you following? I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
No, go ahead.
No, I want to know if you're following the Deshaun Watson situation with the 22 masseuses who are claiming that he sexually assaulted them. Are you familiar with this case at all? Really?
I'm familiar. I heard
none of you know. At the time. Deshaun Watson, NFL quarterback. He's like one of the top 5 quarterbacks on the planet. He lost his job. He lost his job for a year. There were 22 women who leveled up accusations against him for allegedly inappropriate sexual contact during the course of a massage. And when they tried charging him in Harris County, so the grand jury said, we're not indicting him. And then they went to, and then the DA in, I think, Brazoria County or another county.
Is it because he went to the happy ending massage parlor? They're not charging?
Well, basically, the 22 women each have different stories. None of them seem to include penetration, but different sort of ways of him touching, of him displaying himself, which I don't know how someone inappropriately displays himself in a massage, but maybe, I don't know, maybe he was touching himself.
Oh, it happens.
I'm sure you've prosecuted.
Okay. So, but so the speculation is 22 women where there's smoke, there must be fire. On the other hand, a lot of people on his side are saying, look, there's 2 grand juries now which said we're not indicting him. Like there's not enough here. There's not enough corroborating evidence. I would think this would be right in your wheelhouse, Emily. I mean, he's pretty much a celebrity. I know it's a sports case, not like, you don't touch that at all.
I generally am not as familiar, and with so much else going on, I also have a very heavily female audience. Nobody's even asked me to talk about it. So
wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Nobody's been like, I want to hear more about this. Even with the baseball player who's now suing over defamation.
Trevor Bauer.
Is that a hockey guy? Is that a baseball guy? I'm not sure.
Baseball Dodgers.
But Bauer's the name of the sticks, right? For hockey, that's the hockey company. They're Bauer and Bauer.
Bauer skates, yeah.
Thank you. See, I knew there was a reason.
We get the Canadian tell us about the hockey. We tell you about the baseball.
Yeah.
I normally look at things I'm super interested in, and then the things I get tagged in a lot by my audience. Because
no one cares about Deshaun Watson.
I'm just
not really.
He's been so tarnished by this. But here's the fascinating thing.
Well, Joe, go and cover it. Your lane. You got it.
Well, this is the fascinating thing about it. You have 22 women, which that's a huge number of women. His lawyer has put in affidavits from plenty of other masseuses who say he's always a perfect gentleman. This is a guy, he signed a $230 million guaranteed contract. Not one of these. A lot of people in the NFL, when they sign a contract, it's basically like if you play, if you play, and you'll get $40 million 10 years from now. But they know that they're going to end up throwing him off the team before that happens. He's guaranteed $230 million. Each of these instances were not like rape. They're like, he touched me under my skirt type of things, which he would be able to settle them if he wanted to. He could have settled all of them, each of them, for like $1 million. It's one lawyer who's gathered together 22 different women, filed 22 different cases. And he could have settled them. But he's like, no, I am not paying hush money. I did nothing wrong here, and I am not paying these cases off. And this guy, he missed a year of football because of these allegations and these claims when he's in the prime of his career. The guy is like in his late 20s, early 30s. I mean, he's still very much in the prime of his career. He's one of the top players in the NFL, and he's so adamant in defending his name that he's like, no, we're going to trial. If there is a trial, he's not going to pay him. I don't think he's ever going to pay them off on the civil suits and the criminal charges. That you have two DAs which have failed to get an indictment. And after the first one came out with failing to get an indictment, there was all this speculation. You would know about this part, Emily. There was speculation from some people on the left, writers from Sports Illustrated, for example, who accused the DA of intentionally tanking the grand jury, their efforts in the grand jury, so that they could go out and say, look, we tried to get him, but what can I do? The grand jury didn't want to indict and didn't want to.
Joe, why has he not played? Why has he not played for a year?
Why
is he not playing?
All these charges, all this going around him.
But hold on. Does he have a case against the NFL? I mean, don't you have to actually?
He got paid. No, his team. I think his team basically put him on indefinite leave, and then they ended up trading him. So the team didn't want to deal with the headache, so they put him on indefinite leave, and they paid him.
But he did get paid.
Yeah, he got paid.
So it's not complete harm.
Yeah, but I'm saying in the course of his career, though, it hurts.
I understand.
He was
it's going to impact his value for the next trades and whatnot.
Sure. He ended up getting traded, and this is how big a star he is. You can understand the level of significance here. He was traded for like 3 first-round picks and like a 5th-round pick because he's a huge talent. He's really good at what he does. His numbers have been eye-popping, and people make comparisons. They're like, why would anyone want to have Deshaun Watson when they could have Colin Kaepernick? You could see the attention that he's getting versus what Colin Kaepernick's getting, and that's a reflection of the racism or whatever. And first of all, Deshaun Watson is black, but no, there's what? He played for the Houston Texans. He was traded a couple of weeks ago to the Cleveland Browns. He hasn't played for them yet, but he was just traded to the Cleveland Browns. And there was all this anger. What?
Someone said he was injured.
Was he injured? I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't realize he was injured.
I don't judge people who get massages. All of this could have been, and I don't know if these are like, sports massages required, if they would be done with therapists who work for the team. If you don't put yourself in these types of positions, it'll be very difficult for 22 individual massage therapists.
A lot of different massage therapists.
Why does he have 22 individual? Not that. I don't think.
David, he could have gotten a massage every time before a game on travel, for example.
Yeah, but would that not be?
But the team normally travels with trainers.
Yeah,
they do, but I don't know the type of massage.
He supposedly has had over 50 different massage therapists. And like when he goes on the road, he's constantly getting massages.
I just worry that it's using like those soothe services where you're pulling people into your hotel room, and it allows for circumstances where these things happen. But I prosecuted. There was a guy going around to massage parlors all over Venice, California, and like Santa Monica, exposing himself to massage therapists and forcibly grabbing them and touch. I mean, it does happen too, but it was like day by day by day, different massage parlors. And they were constantly reporting him to police, and were finally able to catch up with it. But it ended up being quite a substantial amount. It does happen, but grand juries indict on very minimal.
And still,
isn't there a ham sandwich joke?
So that's my question. Is that not reflective of the fact that since he could have settled and didn't, he easily could have paid these women off, not dealt with it, but he refused to go that route. And 2 grand juries failed to indict. Does that make you feel that, hey, maybe these are just a bunch of women who decided this is a huge pot that we can go after. I once gave him a massage. It's very easy to make false claims and
it
go through online.
Okay. It raises a lot of questions. I mean, if you've got 2 different DA's offices with 2 different grand juries that don't indict, it raises a lot of questions, either about the veracity of the witnesses, the evidence, or the act that was done, where a grand jury's like, you know what, that doesn't rise to the level of being criminal.
Because a grand jury, everything is against the defendant. Everything possible. The standards of proof are lower. There's no defense present. They can't put in anything to explain away anything.
The prosecution has to put in evidence that might exonerate the defendant. They can't.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah, they do. There is a standard of what has to be proved at a grand jury. So if there's things that point to it's not them, that is ethically required to be presented. But normally when you're running a grand jury, you want to present both sides because you're genuinely trying to see how this will play in front of a jury down the road. You're not trying to hamstring your case. I'm not going to say that there's no DAs across the country that use them politically, because I'm not that naive. But when you've got 2 different offices pursuing it, coming to the same result with 2 different grand juries, it raises a lot of questions. But a civil standard is different than a criminal standard. Civil batteries, you don't need the same level of proof that you do in criminal. So he could very well not rise to the level of a crime, but rise to the level of a civil suit where the women prevail. So we will have to see.
But the standard is not beyond a reasonable doubt, though, right? In a grand jury.
No, it's probability.
It's probability, right? So probability seems that seems like
criminal's different than civil, and so what has to be proven at criminal is different, and so it also has to be unanimous.
I need to head out, but this has been wonderful.
I'm going to be wrapping up here. All right, I'm going to be wrapping up here in just a second anyway.
Okay.
So give everybody a chance to plug out.
Hold on. I would just say one thing, Joe. As far as the Lawgic goes, if he sees that he just couldn't get a grand jury on 2 occasions, he might be guilty and say, "Well, they can't prove it there, so I'm gonna. Why would I pay him a penny? I can."
No, these civil suits were filed a year ago. The grand juries let him go over the last month, so he refused. He refused to pay off. Yeah, just give factually as far as So I understand why you would say that, but given the timeline, that doesn't seem like a very likely explanation. So, yeah, I did want to ask you, when you say probability, is that lesser than preponderance of evidence? Well, how would you classify?
No,
that?
It's been a while since I've done any criminal law in court where my brain has to work. But no, in California, it's preponderance of the evidence. When I say probability, it's because even at prelim, it's low, and preponderance is low. So it's the more likely than not of it.
Right. So basically, like a civil trial, it's basically the same as a civil level.
Let's unanimous.
Let Alita get out of here.
Alita, no, it's okay. It's
quartering coming up, right?
All right, guys.
Yeah, I've got to try to have some food before I host the quartering on my channel in about 30 minutes. We're going to talk more Legal Bytes on YouTube, of course.
Nice.
So we're going to be talking about Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard and, cancel culture, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of these social movements and whatnot. Anyhow, it's going to be really fun. And after that, April 11th, I'm live streaming the trial. So assuming that it's going forward on the 11th and it doesn't get delayed by these crazy discovery issues.
By the way, it's not going to be just Alita. Okay, you can expect that many fellow members of Lawgic will be joining her as well. We're going to probably. I can't speak for anyone.
And maybe
else.
A civilian.
Join. Yeah, you guys are all invited, of course.
I expect that it's probably going to end up being, a round table of sorts. So you guys really want to make sure you're sub to her channel, so this way you don't miss any of that.
Thank you, Joe.
David,
I got to go walk a dog because I can see when he's getting ready to do something. You know where to find me, people. Viva Frei, Angry Viva on Twitter. The Viva Frei. And
all right,
Viva Barnes Law.
And I want to plug something while everybody's in here for myself, because I'm greedy that way. This is coming up this afternoon. America's Untold Stories. My partner and I are doing From Anthrax to Batboy to Weekly World News. Mark Robert, right after 9/11, there were the anthrax attacks that killed some people at American Media in Florida. That's the Inquirer company. Mark took over Weekly World News for a while. So yes, he did run the magazine that had Batboy. And we're going to talk about his experiences. And if you've ever watched America's Untold Stories, I promise you, Mark Robert is a master storyteller and has led the craziest life you can imagine. We have a lot of fun. So please consider definitely checking that out. That's my big plug. And, can you subscribe to this channel while you're here? All that good stuff. Emily, what do you have coming up?
I mean, tonight's Friday Night Live at 7 p.m. Central, and I stream every Friday. We've got a new podcast out on Wednesday at The Emily Show. This last week, I covered in depth the Sherry Papini criminal complaint. It is chocked full of shade and facts that were previously unknown about the investigation into a staged kidnapping that is now a federal case where she faces 25 years. So
this is okay. So you can go from Legal Bytes to America's Untold Stories, to Emily's show, to Joe, and it won't be on tonight.
And then I'm at the Emily D. Baker all over social media, and that's where I share, my little quick bits and reels and things like that. So
awesome. And Joe,
I've restructured actually my live streams at night, which basically I stream every night from like 10 to midnight. On the weekend, it usually starts like 10:30, and Saturday and Sunday. I'm never on Friday nights, but Saturday and Sunday I go from like 10:30 to like 12:30 or so. And I've restructured where I actually gave names to my programs. So Saturday, Sunday, it's called Viewer Discretion, because that's where I drop like my hot takes and stuff like that. I've got a hot take I plan on dropping tomorrow, which I think might get me yeeted from YouTube. I'm hoping to find ways to dance around that problem. And I'll figure that out over the next 36 hours. And that'll be tomorrow night at 10:30. And during the week, Monday through Thursday, so I call my show The Following Program. And that's a little bit more about news and things of that nature with some humanities mixed in there. So, and humanities basically means I like talking to people about what makes people tick and refining our